It's very likely that if you are around the Sniper's Alley, Gen X age, around about your 50s, you probably aren't sleeping as well as you used to. I think that's fair enough to say, isn't it?
I think that's absolutely fair enough to say. You're probably not sleeping as well, and you're certainly not sleeping. So you're not sleeping as deeply, and you're also probably waking up in the night or waking up much earlier.
That's it. And if that is the case, you are about to learn some really good stuff because we are talking to Sarah Williamson, who's a nutritional therapist and has been for over 25 years. In other words, she knows her shit.
She's got some really good tips. And also I think, you can feel absolutely delirious with sleep deprivation. It's not a small thing. And she tells us why you feel so terrible and what to do about it.
That's it. And we talk supplements. We talk how food allergies can affect your sleep, about fasting and timing your evening meals. We do a bit of woo or true to try and dispel some myths. And what I should say as well, actually, is that just because we're doing sleep on this episode, it's not like we're not going to revisit it. So for this one, we're kind of very much looking at it from a kind of nutrition angle, like what you shove into your big Gen X pie hole, I'm projecting, has an effect on your sleep or lack of it. But we might do another episode where we're talking about how stress affects your sleep. Or so just because we're doing this angle this time doesn't mean we won't come back to it.
There are some really, really difficult issues that people are facing when it comes to sleep.
Yeah, it was really nice to get some questions in from people who've been listening to the podcast. So thank you for your contributions, especially one of them came in via a voice note. We love voice notes.
Yeah, we love a voice note.
If you want to get in touch, if you just go to snipers-alley.co.uk, get in touch via there. You can WhatsApp us, you can email, we're on Instagram, we're all over the shop, all the usual.
I'm tired today. Are you tired today? I've been waking up so early. But my problem at the moment is normally I can kind of out like a light at 10. And if I wake up early, that's not a problem. I'm still waking up at my normal time, but I can't get to sleep because it's so bloody hot.
What time's your wake up time?
About 5.
Yeah,
I tend to wake up.
I'm a 4:30.
Yeah, I'm 5:30, and I'll just get up, and that's fine. If I'm in bed by 10, that's a pretty good night's sleep for me. But at the moment, I'm not getting to sleep until 12, 1 o'clock because it's just too hot. So we're all a bit delirious in this kind of endless heat wave, and everybody's sleep is affected, and we're all going a little bit mad. So if we're not bringing our usual energy, it's because of exactly what we're about to talk about, which is sleep.
Yeah, let's hear from Sarah now. So we started off by asking Sarah just kind of some of the basics of why do we need sleep and what happens when we don't get enough.
Sleep is really important, and we'll just simplify it so that it doesn't get too techy. Simply important for two things. One, it's really important for your metabolic health. So that is how your body fuels itself. So the better sleep you have, the better fuel partitioning you have. And you run like a hybrid car. So you can burn glucose, sugar, or you can burn fat. And those two function really well under better sleep. The second part is sleep allows you to cleanse your brain. There's a whole, I think it's called a glymphatic system that allows the brain to cleanse. So when you've had poor sleep, one of the things that shows up first is your brain, it doesn't just quite function quite as well. It's a bit sluggish. You forget things, you forget names. And sometimes the memory connections don't fit properly together. So you find your memory, particularly your short-term memory, struggles a bit. But there is one thing I try and do, and that's not over-focus and cause people loads of anxiety about problems with sleep. Because one of the things anyone who sleeps badly knows is the more time they spend worrying about not sleeping, it feeds into them not sleeping.
I think, I was going to ask you about this because I very briefly went on a kind of sleep program thing. I went to the GP because of my terrible sleep a while back, and I got put on this sleep thing, which I did look at reviews, and some people swore by it. I was one of the people it just did not work for at all. And part of the reason it didn't work is because when you start doing sleep diaries and logging your terrible night's sleep, the anxiety, and it's such a vicious circle, isn't it? And like you say, if you can't get to sleep if you're thinking about getting to sleep.
And that's why I get really worried about people wearing all the tech. But also they use an LED light. So if you look in an Aura ring or whatever, they have a little, or your watch, they have a little LED light. And for some people, when they tested putting an LED light on the back of their leg behind their knee, for example, in light sensitive folks, which are a lot of insomniac types, it interrupted their sleep. So again, you've got the thing, and then the watch flashing and telling you you've had a terrible night's sleep, which then feeds into your psychology of the next day. Oh my God, my sleep was bad. I'm going to die a week on Friday because I haven't slept. And off we go. So I think when you've had a good night's sleep. I don't think we need tech to tell us when we've had a good night's sleep. You wake feeling rested and you're ready to hit the day. It's very simple.
We're obviously a Sniper's Alley. What we're doing here is all about, this time of life around about your 50s. And is it the case that just when you hit this age, you're going to have problems? I went to this theatre thing a while back, and there was a very much a kind of Gen X audience, and it was Adam Buxton doing his podcast thing live, and at the start, just when he was warming everyone up, he said, right, hands up if you're in your 50s, and everyone put their hands up, and he said, put your hands down if you sleep through the night, and everyone's hands stayed up. It's such a common thing, and so presumably there's reasons for that. Like, why are so many of us having trouble with it?
So what tends to happen, and obviously, a key area of focus for me is menopausal women, but it's really related to midlife. Like what tends to happen, particularly related to the fact the weird, bizarre, from our biology's perspective, modern world we live in, is we start to build up a series of low-level dysfunction. So one of the ones we look at, and it's the most common reason, I think, for people waking in the night and not being able to get back to sleep. So there's two forms of insomnia that I usually see. One, I can't get to sleep, and that's usually fairly easily resolved. But the other one that can get sticky is I fall asleep within X number of minutes, and then I wake up sometime between 2 and 5 a.m. and I can't go back to sleep. And sometimes I fall back to sleep for 40 minutes before the alarm goes off and I can hardly wake up.
Yeah, it's really interesting you say that, Sarah, because we've been asking people to get in touch when we knew we were going to be speaking to you, and Simon in Oxfordshire, out of interest, I messaged him back, and he's to find out how old he is, and he's 52, same age as me. And his question was, it's exactly what you're talking about, how to stay asleep. I go out like a light and wake up at about 2 or 3. I listen to the radio with an earphone and fall back off. And this, from what you're saying, is common.
It's really common, and there are a few factors, but the most common factor, if we think about what happens over sleep, for most of us is the longest period of time we go without eating. And what should happen is your body should be able to fuel overnight. So you have sort of a low level production of cortisol, so it drops off, but cortisol, everyone gives cortisol a bad rap. It's necessary for life. It's just that Goldilocks thing. It just needs to be in the right amount. And cortisol's job is to provide you glucose and fuel overnight. If you get low in fuel, because you have something called insulin resistance, which I'll talk about in a second, what then happens is your body uses adrenaline. It's like, I've got enough fuel. I need adrenaline. And adrenaline gives you quick fuel, but it wakes you straight back up. So you're like, could get up and do my day now. Other signs of insulin resistance are also really tied to common midlife health issues. So your waist gets larger as you store fat around your middle. You might be hungrier. You have more sugar cravings. You get brain fog. You can't remember people's names. Nouns are the thing that go first. So you're like, what's her, her name? That is just a sign of your brain not having enough fuel. If you think this is you, so if your waist is more than half of your height, or you've definitely put on a bit around the middle, you are, by definition, insulin resistant. You then need to understand that you struggle to fuel on carbohydrates. So the carbohydrates are bread, flour, potatoes, sugary foods, sugary drinks, lattes, not just things you eat, things you drink too. And it means you're struggling. So what your body does is it gets all this glucose into the system, and it's like, okay, we've got a load of glucose. So what you need to do is train your body to become more insulin sensitive, i.e. insulin, which is the key to get the fuel into the cells, starts working really well again. So the fuel goes in quickly. If it's delayed, it stores as body fat. So you get fatter and hungrier. So if you reduce the amount of carbohydrate you're eating, increase the protein you're eating, and have a bit of healthy fat on the side. So you're eating green leafy veg, fibrous veg, loads of protein. Don't worry about how much you're eating in the protein department. It's very hard to overeat. And then, a bit of butter, a bit of olive oil, a bit of, what I call the great grandmother fats your grandmother would have recognized, and eat 3 or 4 meals a day, you will rapidly improve your insulin sensitivity and you will start sleeping through the night. There will be a small adjustment period where it gets a bit worse because your body's having to start learning to fuel using fat and glucose again, but it will work beautifully.
And I assume the timing of food as well must really matter.
What we've seen a lot of is people fasting. So fasting's become incredibly fashionable. And in some people, it works very well. It tends to work better for men than women. So it can improve insulin sensitivity in men. I don't think anyone does well if they skip meal and they've got a lot of stress. So if you're a very stressed out male and you haven't slept for a week, then skipping meals is probably not where you want to go because it pushes your cortisol up. And the same for women. I often see women, they start fasting, they go, yeah, I felt good. I skipped a meal. And then it stops working and then they just push harder. So they push that meal out further. They don't eat till 3:00 in the afternoon. Then they eat all the things in the cupboard because they've got too hungry. And then we're in a vicious cycle. So I think fasting can be helpful, but not if you're already under stress. Timings wise, late meals. This can be a difficult one, and it's a bit of a suck it and see in the sense that eating very late can obviously keep digestion running, and that can interfere with your sleep, the early part of sleep. But if you're struggling to fuel overnight, eating too early means you're trying to go from 6 till 6 in the morning. And for some people, while they're getting their insulin sensitivity working again, that's too long. So you probably need to have a main meal around 6:30. And then temporarily, you might add in something small later in the evening.
That's really interesting because I do think one of the things that I've noticed about turning 50, it feels like, so if I've eaten late, it feels like I've given my body the choice between digesting my food and sleeping. Like it can pick one, it can't pick both. And like, do you remember the days when we used to go out for dinner and we'd be at a friend's house and we wouldn't stop finishing, we would eat until like 11 and drink and, I'd have a double espresso or something and I'd still sleep. I'd be fine. And now it's like, if I eat after 8, I can't sleep.
Like everything, the really interesting thing is if you persistently have this fueling issue, that fueling issue affects every cell in your body, right, including your digestive function, your brain, your skin, your hair, everything. Because all of your cells are reliant on fuel to do whatever, or the enzyme pathways to do whatever they need to do. So again, what we see in women and men as they get older is their digestive system starts to underfunction. Their liver starts to underfunction. Like nothing works quite right. You can't exactly put your finger on it, but you're just nowhere near as good as you were when you were 20. However, if you pay attention to the fueling and a few of the other things we'll probably talk about, you can get a lot of that back. It's not, this is a dead cert, we just have to live with it forever. You just have to work a bit harder. And unfortunately, in the weird environment we live in, where we never get outside, we eat food that is a long way distant from where it came from, or sometimes ever even being real food. They're food-like substances, as someone said to me once. That's harder. Everyone's very critical of, everyone's just fat and lazy and they don't do this, they don't do that. But life was much easier, even in the 70s, to be healthy. TV didn't turn on till 5:00. You had 2 channels. You ate real food because processed food did not exist to the extent it does now. It just wasn't so difficult. Again, don't be too critical of yourself. Just pull in, and you just need to pull enough strings to get the ship to turn. And then you start to feel good.
When we knew you were coming on, Sarah, we asked people to get in touch with their questions. Some of them have come through on voice notes, like this one from Claire.
I've been having loads of trouble sleeping recently, and lots of people I've spoken to have suggested and recommended I take magnesium. But to be honest, it's a bit of a minefield. There are so many different types, and I'm not really sure where to start.
Claire, that was a lovely question. I get asked a lot about magnesium. So magnesium comes in many forms. For sleep, I tend to use magnesium glycinate or magnesium bisglycinate. And the reason is it can be really helpful, because it supports insulin sensitivity that we've just been talking about. But B, it also works in the brain because glycine works on something called the GABA receptor. GABA's job is to switch off overthinking. It affects women sometimes a little bit more at this life stage because progesterone supports GABA function. So if you don't ovulate, so you're either menopausal or you've got trouble ovulating, you don't get that support with the GABA receptor. Men also have issues sometimes on that GABA receptor. Men have the same sex hormones as women, just in different amounts. So they still have progesterone and estrogen in there. Women still have testosterone. So when we use glycinate, because the glycine part acts on that GABA receptor. So that's useful. And magnesium allows muscular relaxation. So when you pull a muscle, you tense your arm, you use calcium. And when you relax a muscle, you use magnesium. So if you're low in magnesium, you're unable to relax. So a lot of people carry a lot of tension around their neck, shoulders, jaw, for example, and magnesium can be really helpful for that. So there are lots of ways. It can also lower blood pressure and other things that are really useful for supporting good health. So magnesium is great. However, if you take magnesium and it's not making a big difference, don't just keep upping the dose. You don't suddenly get better. This thing of something's good, therefore more is always better. We humans love that. It isn't working. So keep the magnesium in there, but if that's not resolved, there's other things afoot. So we'll have a little bit of a peel of the onion and see what else might be going on.
And how should you take magnesium?
So you can use magnesium orally. And for a lot of people, it's really helpful because it helps that muscle relaxation so it can get the bowel moving. And it can also allow water to be drawn into the bowel. So for people who struggle with constipation, magnesium's miraculous. Minerals, magnesium in particular, is really well absorbed through the skin. So you can spray, you get these magnesium sprays. I think there's a company, I have no ties to any supplement companies, but Better You is one we use a lot. You can spray it on your body. I think they use magnesium chloride for that. It's very well absorbed through the skin.
I had some magnesium butter, which I had to stop using because my dog went nuts for it.
Oh, now that I haven't heard. So magnesium butter is the same. It's the magnesium chloride.
So it must have had actual butter in it, I think. I don't know. But anyway, the dog was just like, this is amazing. And she'd go like a little bit weird and kept trying to like lick my feet and like hump my feet. So it had a really weird effect on my dog.
Okay. Stick with the spray, Emily. Stick with the spray. Well, as long as it didn't have that effect on your husband, you'll be fine.
No, he wasn't. It didn't make him hump my feet at all. He wasn't. He was unaffected. It was just the dog. She was absolutely nuts for it.
Emily, when you get to Sniper's Alley, beggars can't be choosers. Now, I think there is another thing that causes people to wake up in the night. So we've done insulin. We've looked at magnesium, but there is another thing that affects quite a lot of people, and that's allergies and histamine intolerance. So if you've got food allergies, and these can be intolerances, it doesn't mean you have an allergic reaction to a peanut, that kind of thing. That clearly would affect your sleep. But you've got these kind of intolerances, this situation where the body is producing an immune reaction of some description to a food. But people with these kind of issues are 2.5 to 4.5 times more likely to struggle with insomnia. It's a big deal. They're 6 times more likely to feel sleepy in the day. So even when they sleep, they're not that rested. So this is a big deal. Now, how do you know whether this is you? So there's loads of very expensive food allergy testing out there, and you can draw blood and you can use labs and all the things, but none of them have been shown to be that effective, and very rarely do 2 ever match. So therefore, the best way of doing it is to remove what I call the key culprits from your diet for a couple of weeks and then reintroduce them. The key offenders in this department, I think the number one is dairy and gluten. They are the 2 that I see that really affect sleep. Dairy, weirdly, is really common, and I don't know what it is about it. But when people cut out dairy, they stop waking in the night really quickly. Let's just go through the top kind of things you can think about that might be causing issues. Dairy, number 1. I'd go eggs and gluten. You can choose which way around you do those. Chocolate, nuts, and sometimes people struggle with citrus fruits. Those are the kind of big ones. Just go for 2 weeks, cut it out, and just see if your sleep gets better and you can get past that little hump in the night. Histamine is, most people have heard about it in relation to hay fever, antihistamines, all of those things. But histamine is a natural substance produced in the body, really important for digestive function, so good levels of stomach acid, you need histamine. For orgasm, you need a histamine. So that, it's not without uses. But when you've got it in excess, then you can be problematic and it can cause real sleep issues. So what people tend to do who've got histamine intolerance, they tend to never really get into deep sleep and they flutter in and out of sleep for a lot of the night. And then they might end up waking up at 3:00 in the morning, emptying the dishwasher. With histamine, temporarily, we recommend lowering your histamine load by lowering foods that are high in histamine. The foods that are high in histamine are foods that are fermented. They've had exposure to bacteria or they've been aged in some way. So that can mean leftovers or it can mean wine and cheese.
There was something that you said earlier and something that Rob said to me that I want to kind of explore with you. So you were saying be really careful that your body doesn't get used to the idea that it needs less sleep.
Yeah.
So that's really intriguing because I spoke to Rob and I said, why do we feel so terrible when we don't sleep? Well, I feel hungover. I feel like my skin is almost crawling. It feels really weird. And Rob said he doesn't.
I feel I've had about 18 months of awful sleep. And I just exactly what you said before, Sarah, I can get off to sleep, no problem at all. And then pretty much every 2 hours or every 90 minutes, I'm awake. And exactly like you said, I could do a day's work. I don't feel rough. I could get up at 2:00 and I feel like I could kind of do pretty much anything. And it's gone on for so long. And yeah, we were talking about it and I was saying, like, I feel fine, but I presume I'm not. So it's hard. It's very hard to gauge.
It is hard to gauge. I think there's two things. One, I think with your case, Emily, we know histamine is a big part of that pattern. So when you're not sleeping, you don't clear the histamine as well. And also that hungover feeling comes from your brain not getting its kind of cleansing routines. Interestingly, the natural sleep cycle is in and around 90 minutes. So what Rob's doing is he's waking up at the end of the natural sleep cycle. And so he's not feeling terrible when he wakes up, because you feel truly terrible when you're woken up in the mid of the deep sleep cycle.
Right.
And so you feel like someone's hit you over the head. What you're doing is you're cycling in and out of these 90-minute cycles. So the other thing that people, and this week, I had a client this week who'd, she emailed me, she was like, I've had this, and she's an old client. She goes, I've had this disaster. I can't sleep at all. I wake up and I'm sleeping for about 2 hours and then I can't get back to sleep. And, her sleep cycle, it sounds like she's going through the similar sleep cycle thing. And I said, okay, when you wake up, take half a teaspoon of salt, put it in your water, drink it. And she's back to sleep in 10 minutes. Because some people, if their blood pressure drops off or there's low electrolytes, because sodium is used, you're an electrical creature. You're basically a battery. You're water and salt and potassium. You are a walking battery. And that's why we're influenced by all the electronics that go on in the world. And it's actually why we have a huge field around our body that we notice when people step into it. Because we're electrical beings and, we can't see that, but that's how we function in the world. And so salt and sodium and potassium are so important. And for a lot of us, particularly on hot, sweaty nights, or we drink loads of water, we must be good. We all drink 2 to 3 litres of water and we just wash out our electrolytes because we then don't add any salt in. And particularly the more people try to move towards a healthy diet, they take out all processed food and naturally their salt disappears. And everybody needs at least a teaspoon of salt a day.
That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Because I think I have a very low salt diet.
Okay. So tonight, Rob, experiment. A small glass of water, half a teaspoon of salt or quarter of a teaspoon of salt, swirl it round. When you wake up, drink it. See how quickly you get back to sleep.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll give it a crack. Yeah.
That is amazing.
And if it starts to work, then adding more salt to your diet. And if you're cooking from whole foods, I literally get people to put in a little ceramic dish or a teacup or something, a teaspoon of salt, and make sure they've had it.
Because salt's had quite a bad press, really, hasn't it?
Of course it has.
And so is it another one of these things that, that the advice has been, have margarine and not butter?
So The word salary comes from the word salt because Roman soldiers were paid in salt because it was so valuable. So I think it's always important to understand that when food gets looked at in science, it gets looked in a very narrow box. Often the studies are very weak. So they go, oh, this population, they're all vegetarian and they live to, longer. But the vegetarians tend not to smoke. They do yoga. They do a load of other things that may contribute to longevity that are nothing to do with being vegetarian. And that's how a lot of very poor studies arise. And that's actually how the studies around red meat being very bad for you has arisen. They're related to correlating studies. So a lot of red meat eaters are naturally rebellious and they smoke and they do all the things. So therefore they have issues with their health. It's nothing to do with the red meat. Red meat's been part of our diet since the beginning of time. That's how we've lived on the planet, is hunting big, hairy, grass-feeding animals. And so our body knows exactly what to do with red meat. But if you combine red meat with smoking, drinking, doing all the things, it's not going to be so good for you. There's nothing wrong with any of these things. It's just about having them in the right balance.
Yeah.
And you can see if we do years of a lower sodium diet, or we've had something that happened which has kicked our histamine into being too high, or we've had persistent high carbohydrate diet, and then the wheels start to come off. Is why mid-50s are more challenging, but it is a golden chance to go, I've got some symptoms, I'm not going to ignore them, I'm going to actually unravel it.
And that is absolutely the whole point of Sniper's Alley. That is absolutely the whole point of it, is that we're not going to ignore stuff anymore, because we want to have a good decade in our 60s and we want to have a good decade in our 70s. And if we don't kind of get to grips with the stuff now, we know the direction of travel.
Exactly. Look, we are all definitely going to die.
Oh, fucking hell, Sarah. That's really put a downer on this. We were having a lovely chat.
We were getting on so well.
But we all are. It's a dead cert, but it's then how you live.
Exactly.
Like, what you want to do is live really well, have a bad 3 weeks and fall off your perch. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
You are not looking for, I want to feel really unwell for 15 years.
Yeah.
And live with some kind of chronic disease, which I then have to be medicated for, which then has side effects forever.
Me and Emily, we've been toying with this idea of doing something called woo or true, which is basically, kind of common things that you hear. Is it woo or is it true? So very quickly, wearing socks, good for sleep because your feet get warm and you cool down or something. That's one I've heard. Woo or true?
True-ish. So what we find is to get to sleep, and why a hot water bottle works, is it raises your core temperature, and then as it cools, your core temperature drops, and it's the dropping of the core temperature. It's the change in the temperature that encourages you to drop off to sleep. So if you're cold and the core temperature is a bit low, then getting a bit warmer will help you sleep.
Excellent. Woo or true, Sarah? Getting out first thing in the morning in the sunshine.
Very important. Glad you mentioned it. Sunlight, morning sunshine, really important, without your glasses, and evening sunlight. So as the sun sets, it's the red light of the morning and the day, and maybe a bit in the midday, that are really going to help you set your circadian rhythm and encourage healthy sleep.
Sarah, this has been brilliant. I mean, we could go on for hours, genuinely. And if you would come on again, it would be so good to talk some more.
I would love to come on. I'm happy to talk on all topics. Sniper's Alley.
So I really hope that means some people might be able to sleep.
I hope so. There was so much really, really helpful information there. So thank you very much to Sarah for talking to us. And like we mentioned before, just because we've spoken to Sarah, that we're not saying, right, we've done sleep now, we'll never come back to it. There's plenty more. It's one of those ones that I'm sure we'll go back to. Speaking of things that are happening in the future, the next episode of Sniper's Alley is going to be, we're not going to have a guest, it's going to be me and Em, and it's all going to be about the differences between generations.
That's right. Well, but principally, I think, Gen X and millennials.
So before anyone says anything, look, yeah, it's broad strokes, okay? We're not saying that just because you're born one year, you're completely different and whatever. But I think there are Gen X traits, and I think there are millennial traits. And we're going to lean into that a little bit, and we would love you to get in touch. So one of the things, we won't talk about it properly now, but one of the things that me and Em were discussing the other day is like hugging. Especially in kind of professional environments, like hugging is kind of like, it's a lot more of a thing now. And it seems to have kind of been from the more millennial end of things.
Yeah. We're not talking about hugging people that you love. We're okay with that. We're not boomers. Yeah. We're talking about hugging somebody that you've never met before and how you feel about that and whether or not you think that that is an acceptable greeting socially or professionally. So you're in the workplace. I will share a story that I've heard that honestly my jaw dropped. I couldn't believe somebody would do this.
And I will talk about me and you, Em, and the hugging thing. Because I think there's a dynamic there that's quite interesting, and I have a theory about that as well.
I look forward to that.
So this is, that's just an example. So it's the things that kind of are a little bit different between the generations. We realise broad strokes, stereotyping. We are aware of this. It's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, we like to keep it shallow, to be honest.
So we would love to hear your views on this. If that's kind of sparked any thoughts, do get in touch, especially if it's a voice note. We love voice notes. We love voice notes. If we use your voice note on the podcast, we'll send you a Sniper's Alley mug. Yes, it's bribery.
Well, it's not beneath us.
So to get in touch, it's snipers-alley.co.uk, or we're on Instagram, which is Snipers Alley Podcast. But yeah, what are those kind of Gen X millennial differences? Or if you completely disagree and just think, no, everyone's the same. This is horoscopes. This is like saying, oh, you're like this because you're a Capricorn.
Yeah.
And that's bollocks.
Different times. There were different times, and have those different times made different people? And I think it's kind of okay to say there are certain sort of things, social contagion things like hugging, that have become normal to some people that are not normal to other people. And my thesis is, if you will allow me to present it, is that Gen Xers are not natural huggers.
So that has been a little taster of Em's TED Talk and forthcoming PhD.
Gosh, I'm so much fun.
And if you would like to contribute to this, or if you can think of any other noticeable differences between the generations, we'd be very interested in hearing from you.
These are the important issues of the day that we need to spend our time analysing.
I'm almost convinced.